Hello again and welcome to the channel. My name's Annie and this is my creative detour. I hope you're all having a great week and have had time to have a bit of a play in your crafty space. I've had a lovely visit from my parents. They live in New South Wales and they came up to visit for 4 or 5 days and it was lovely. And before my mother came, I actually asked her if she could bring up the doily holder. Now, I wanted to show you this doily holder because it's very special. It actually feels like it's got suede on it. I will open it and show you. But I remember this doily holder from when I was a very little girl. And when I would be dusting and cleaning my dressing table, or I was helping my mother or my grandmother dust the sideboard or the dressing tables or the coffee table, we would get this doily holder out and we'd change the doilies occasionally. And my nana used to let me pull all the doilies out and play with them. Well, I said to my mum before she flew to Brisbane, I said, "Mum, would you be able to take out the old doily holder and leave all your doilies at home and bring this doily holder up so that I can show it on the camera, because I'm going to make one and I'm going to use this as my inspiration." Now, this doily holder is very, very old. You can see that the paper in it is very brittle and is cracked. So I'm going to actually repair that for my mother, and on both sides. And you can see that even this page here, it is lifting. But I said to my mum, "How old do you think this doily holder is?" And she said, "Well, it was my grandmother's. So that means it was my great-grandmother's." And I said, "Now, what was her name?" And her name was Amelia. And she used to go by Min. And I said, "Is that Min or Minnie from the postcards?" And she said, "Yes." So for all of you out there that have been watching the channel for a while, and we restored some of those postcards with the stories of Min and Fred, or Minnie and Fred, this was Min's doily holder. Now, it's made of cardboard of some sort, then covered in paper, and then it's got a layer of suede on the top of it, and it's got 4 eyelet holes with some cord in it that goes through the top and the bottom. So it's very basically made, but then it looks like it's got burnt line work on it and dot work on it. So burnt needlework, where you would use a hot needle or a hot tool to decorate. So I'll bring it up to the camera. And as I said, I asked my mother how old she thought it was, and she said, well, she thinks that this would have to be close to 100 years old, this doily holder, because we know what year my great-grandmother passed away, and we know how old she was when she passed away. If we work backwards to when she would have been a housewife with children and using this in her own home, we're thinking that it would have been around about the 1920s. So we're thinking it's around about 100 years old, and I feel so blessed and privileged to be able to show this to you, and that we still have it in our family. Now, I'm going to, like I said, use this as my inspiration. I'm not going to do anything with this other than repair it for my mother, because my mother uses this still and she will want to take this home with her when she flies home. But you can see that it's designed so that it opens up and folds down. I will put some of my doilies in it and show you how it works. So here we have some of my doilies, and the doilies can fold and sit into it, and then it swings back around, so the cord is long enough that it then ties shut, and this can go into your linen cupboard, and it keeps all of your doilies all in one location, sandwiched between 2 pieces of cardboard and nice and flat. So I wanted to show you this. My mother flies home tomorrow, So I thought if I do a video showing it to you, well then in about 4 or 5 days time later in the week, we will make one together, but I won't be able to show you this example again. So if you do want to see this again at the end of the video, you'll have to come back to the beginning of the video where I'm doing this introduction. So there you go, that's what our project is going to be on this video. For me, I will video it later in the week, but you will see the process in a few seconds time. And I will have worked out how I'm going to make it and the materials I'm going to use. So I'll see you in a little bit with all of the resources. Okay, it's a few days later and my parents have gone back home to New South Wales, and I've pulled out a few resources to make this doily holder. Now what I've pulled out is 2 pieces of chipboard, and it's the chipboard that you get on the back of your 12 by 12 paper. And I have 2 sheets. You can see one's slightly bigger than the other, but I'm going to cut them down anyway. And I'm going to show you a few tricks with that, because I'm going to glue them together and I'm going to glue them at 90-degree angles to give it more strength. So we'll chat about that in a moment. What else do I have? I have this lovely Australian gift wrapping paper, and this paper is reversible and it's from Bespoke Letterpress and Stationery here in Australia, and they have lovely stationery, gift wrapping paper, all different types of journals, and I purchased from them quite a bit, and I'm going to use this side of it as my paper to cover the back of the doily holder. I also pulled out some fabric because I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Now what I remember of the doily holder when it was loaded full of doilies is that the top of it would bend when you tied it closed with your doilies in. You tied on one side, tied on the other. The top cardboard would bend, it would strain and curve. And I think that's why the paper has given way on the inside, because it's been flexing and then getting bent back and flex and back. So I think that I'm going to make the top of my doily holder out of something else. I'm thinking that I'm going to make it out of a postage pack, because I don't need the top of it to be flat. I'm okay with the top of it folding a little bit. So I think that I'm going to cut a circle out of this and make this the top of my doily holder. And I've got some scrapbook paper, and this one is Catch of the Day from Graphic 45. I'm going to cover the inside of the cardboard with this, and I'm going to cover the top with some fabric. I'm then going to sew on some doilies onto the front of it so that it's obvious it's a doily holder. I'm not going to scribe onto it doily or anything like that at the moment. I may decide that as we get into the project that I might stamp a nameplate. I'll have a little bit of a think about that as we progress and have a bit of a play, but that's where we're heading. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to do our base. So I measured my mother's doily holder and it was 11 inches wide. And I thought to myself it was a good size. And I also thought that it's a good size because most of us will all have some decent cardstock or chipboard that we can use from our scraps, from our 12 by 12 papers. So I thought that that was a good size. And then I went hunting to do a circle, and I thought, how am I going to do a circle and get it cut nicely? Well, we'll see if I cut it nicely. I'm thinking it's going to work, but what I found was my favorite salad bowl, and when I measure the lip, it's pretty much 11 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around this, and I'm going to hold it down and cut it with my knife, and it will take a few passes to cut through it. So that's where I'm going to start. But before I do that, I want to talk about this chipboard. So I have two pieces of chipboard here that we're going to start with making the base. Now, quite a long time ago, when my husband and I were in our 20s and early 30s, we had a cabinetry business, and we would manufacture kitchens and different types of cabinetry and furniture. And that's how I got into design, because I used to design the kitchens and the furniture for him. We would do that together, or I would do it, and then we had him and employees that would make the furniture. But that was almost a lifetime ago. But what I learned in that process is that different types of sheet products and natural fibers have a grain. Now, most of you will know this because you would have like a timber table or something, and you notice the grain in it. You can see it on my desk that I've got a grain in the timber. So when you're folding paper or cardboard, it's the same. And when you fold cardboard and flex it one way, it will bend okay in one direction, and then the other way it will resist it. And I can see that that's resisting that way, but it's complying with me this way. So I can tell that with the grain of this cardboard, it's going this way. So I'm going to put an arrow on it, because I will need that in a little bit after I've cut the circle. I'll need to know that. And we'll do the same with the other one. Now I can see that it's not easily bending that way, and it's easily bending this way, so I can see the grain is going that way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these together in different directions. So after I've cut the circle, I'm going to glue them with the grain going at 90 degrees to each other. And the reason I'm going to do that is because, first of all, I didn't have cardboard that was going to be thick enough and sturdy enough to be the base, but also I don't have an easy way of cutting it. I don't have a machine or anything to do it. I've got to do it with my knife. So I was thinking about myself, but also for you guys, how can we cut it and make it strong? And this was my option, that we cut two circles that are not too thick, but we laminate them together at 90 degrees so that it then becomes quite strong, because basically we've got grain going this way and then we're going to glue grain going this way. So it's going to resist warping and bending. So I then went on the hunt looking for something that was 11 inches. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly 11 inches. You can do yours whatever size you want, but I wanted it to be at least smaller than my cardboard that I've got here, or my chipboard. And I also wanted it, if I want to use a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, which I do, it's going to also be able to be useful for me. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw some circles on this, and that's so that I can keep my salad bowl on the line when I'm trying to cut it. So I'm going to draw around my salad bowl on both pieces of chipboard, and now I'm going to stand up and cut it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply pressure to my bowl. I won't cut through it all in one go. I'll go around it a few times and cut it slowly and progressively. Okay, so now that I've got a reasonably deep channel there, I'm going to take the bowl off because it's kind of moving too much. And I'm going to work my way around cutting the chipboard circle out. And I'm not trying to do it in one go. I'm working my way steadily around the groove, just doing a little bit at a time. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect because we're going to be covering it. So that wasn't too bad. I've got a few bird edges, but that doesn't matter. I've got my little sander here, and I'm just going to sand off any of those rough bird edges. Now my sander, you might be thinking, Annie, where did you get your sander from? Now some of you use a Tim Holtz little disc sander. I didn't want to pay the money for a disc sander, so I just went to Bunnings and got a doorstop, and I stuck on a piece of adhesive Velcro, and then I went up to my husband's shed, and he's got sanding discs that he puts on his sander that have got Velcro on the back. And I just used my 1-inch punch, and I punched out a whole lot of little sanding discs, and I just used that as my sander. So I'm just going to sand the edges, and I'm going to do both sides. Okay, so there we go. We have one disc, and that was much easier than I was anticipating, to be honest. And you can see that I'm pleased that I've put that arrow on it. I now know that that's exactly the way that it's going to bend, because it would be harder to work out when it's round which exactly is the way. So I'm really pleased I put the arrow on before I cut it out of the square piece of chipboard. All right, I'm going to do the next one and sand it, and I'll be back and we'll do the next step. Okay, so there we go. I have my 2 pieces of chipboard, and like I said, I just got these 2 pieces of chipboard off of a 12 by 12 inch paper pad, and I'm going to be gluing them together to create the base. So let's do that now, and I'm going to put glue stick down first, and a generous amount, and you can see that I have one arrow going one direction and the other arrow going another direction, and that's so that I glue them perpendicular to each other, or 90 degrees to each other. And I'm also going to put a generous amount of art glitter glue on this, because I want it to really stick well. And I'm going to take off my little nozzle and use my big nozzle, and that's because I want the edge to really grab. I don't want it to separate with the humidity here in Brisbane. If the glue oozes out, I'm okay with that, because we're going to be covering it. So you can see I've got one arrow going horizontally, and this one I'm going to put it vertically so that I change the direction of the grain, and we'll burnish that down. I'll just make sure that it's really lined up first. Pretty good. So give it a really good burnish. And I didn't end up putting too much glue on it. It worked out to be a good amount. It's not oozing out, but it's coming to the edge. Now what I would do in an ideal world now is I would press that on a solid surface, like on a tiled floor or something like that. I'd put it on the floor, put some atlases on it, some heavy books, and I'd leave that overnight. And that will laminate and glue together and be really sturdy, and it's not going to bend easily. But with the camera, I don't have the option of doing that, but I will press it for a little bit in a moment. I'm now going to cover it with some paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a circle bigger than the circle that I need. And I'm not going to be too precious about it. I'm just going to lay it on there and cut it out. Now, these birds go a particular direction. It would be better for it to not have a direction, but it's not really going to matter. We can align that later. But I'm just going to freehand that. I'm going to put it around about an inch. I'm not sure whether you can see. I might be off camera. But I'm going to put it about an inch from the edge here and an inch from the edge there. And I'm going to just draw a freehand circle around it, and we'll cut that out. So now we have our disc and we have our cover. You can see that it's a bit wobbly, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to cover it and then I'm going to put another nicely cut circle on the inside. Okay, so what I want to do now is glue this down, and I'm actually going to put on some double-sided sheet onto this. Now I just have some double-sided adhesive sheet. I might just trace around that so that I can join a few pieces. Okay, so let's glue a few down. So I'm just going to peel this back and I'll just cut off that excess. So there we go, we have our double-sided paper on. Now I have my birds here and they're my good side, and I'm going to put this down and take off the released paper, and I'm also going to put a little bit of art glitter glue on this because I really want it to stick well. And run a bead of glue around the edge and just a squeeze. Okay. And I'm going to give that a really good burnish. And if it oozes out, it doesn't worry me because we're going to wrap it around the edge. Okay, that's feeling really good. So I'm going to go around the edge and I'm going to snip the edge around about half an inch or 1.3 centimeters. And I'm not going all the way to the chipboard. I'm leaving it around about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters. And that's so that it doesn't leave a little pucker on the face of the front. Okay, I've got it cut all the way around. Now what I'll do now is I'm going to run a bead of glue progressively around the edge and around the face. So I'll do it in sections. I'm going to put a bead of glue on this edge here and then some glue here. And I'm just going to work my way and pull up those little tabs. I'll show you on the camera. So I'm just folding them up and it's doing a nice tight edge on it. And I don't want to do it too fast because the art glitter glue will dry before I get to it. So I'll just do it progressively. There we go, that's looking good. Now I will do that all the way around and I'll be back with you in a moment. Okay, so there we go. Oh, that's looking lovely, isn't it? So I'll just give that a really good burnish, and I'm just going to burnish it in the direction of the paper folding onto itself rather than against it. And I'm going to give it a bit of a roll on my desk. Okay, so now that's pretty much ready to go on the base. I just need to cover this. So what we'll do is we'll cut 2 discs of our scrapbook paper, and I'm going to use my salad bowl again. I'm just going to draw around my salad bowl with a pencil on both of them. And I'm just going to cut that out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to cut it around about 1/16 of an inch, so 2 millimeters on the inside of the circle. And I'm just going to take my time actually, so I'll probably speed the camera up. Okay, and I have done a few other prep things while I was off the camera, But I've cut my circle out of the scrapbook paper. You can use any scrapbook paper, and you can see that it is just slightly smaller than our disc, and that's because we cut on the inside of the edge. And I'm going to put down a whole lot of glue stick onto here, and I'm also going to use art glitter glue as well, but I'm going to spread the art glitter glue actually with my gift card. I'm going to spread it. Because I'm not using that double-sided paper this time. Right, I need to be quick, and we'll pop this on. And the art glitter glue with the glue stick, it means the glue stick mixes with it, and it just gives you the tiniest little bit of time to slide it and correct it. And I'm just going to wipe off that glue off of my card, because that art glitter glue will get really hard to get off. Okay, so now I'm really happy with that and how that's gone. It's quite precise for it being a freehand cut. It's nicely tidied up on the edge. So I'm going to actually put that under some books now while we do the top. The next step is to do the top, and I'm wanting to do it out of this postage pack. Now you can see that I have traced around my salad bowl again, and I have cut out the postage pack, and I've cut out both thicknesses of it. You can see that put my hand in the postage pack and it's cut out double-sided. And then what I have done is I've pulled it apart and glued it back together, and that's so that it stays a little bit more stable and is sort of bound together as one unit rather than it working independently how it needs to in the postage pack. So I've glued all but one piece back together, and that's so that I could show you how I've done it. So you can see the glue in there, that I've put a little bit of glue, and each layer has been glued to the previous layer. And that's just like I said, so that it works as one unit. But also I wanted to make sure that I could put the printed sides on the inside so that it wouldn't shine through the fabric. I didn't want to see the really dark Amazon writing as well. So we'll put some glue on this. Don't need very much art glitter glue, that will do. And I'm just going to glue that together and burnish that down. And you can see that I have also cut out of my fabric a piece of fabric that is probably about 2 inches wider. So it's probably 13 inches or so wide, maybe 13¼ inches in diameter. And I'm going to do the same thing in that I'm going to snip all the way around the edges, but I'm going to glue it together slightly differently. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my postage pack to my fabric, and I'm just going to use glue stick. I'm not going to use art glitter glue because I don't want it to soak through the fabric. I'm just putting this down so that it sort of holds it in position, so that it's not moving all around. That's the only reason, while I snip my edges. And I'll get my fabric scissors and I'm going to just snip around the edges like I did with the other one. And I'm doing it a little bit wider because the fabric is a little bit more forgiving than the paper. It will stretch a little bit better than the paper. So I'm probably doing it about 2 centimeters wide or 3/4 of an inch wide, something like that. Once again, I'm not cutting all the way to the postage pack. I'm stopping it short around about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to put some glue stick on and fold it up, fold a few up. I'm not going to pull it overly tight, to be honest. I'm not going to strain it, and I'm just going to glue it up so that it sits and sits nicely so that they lay down nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the opposite side. So with the other one, the paper was very rigid and held in place with our double-sided adhesive. But with this one, the fabric might move a little bit, and I want it to be sitting nice all the way around. And I'm being a little bit more precise with how I lay down the fabric. So the cuts are sitting nicely. And then we'll do the other side. Okay. Now we can go back and fill in some bits. Oh yes, that's working okay. And I'm going to eventually put a stitch around the edge of that, but not till I've put on my doilies. So I'll continue on with this and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, I'm back and I've glued all of that down, and I'm really happy with how that has settled onto the post pack. And it's not too thick. I'm going to be able to put an eyelet through it, so that was part of my thinking as well, that it needed to be sturdy enough but still not too thick that I couldn't get an eyelet through. And I want it to be pliable. I want it to be able to curve and bend with the pile of doilies. I didn't want it to be too rigid. So now what we're going to do is I think I'm going to stitch on some of these doilies, and I don't know that I want to stamp anything on it or spell anything out. I think I just want the doilies to speak for themselves, that that's what it is. It's a doily holder, and I kind of have just laid them on top of each other, and I'm going to stitch them on. I probably will stitch around this one and around this one, and then I'll probably just put a few little stitches here and there just to hold the lace. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine now and do that, and then once I've done that, we can come back and we can glue the back on, and then I'll go back to the sewing machine and we'll put an edge stitch around the perimeter, which will pick up some of that lace as well. All right, let me go and stick some of these on. I might just put a little bit of glue just to hold them. There we go. All right, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. I've got threads everywhere, but that went reasonably okay. Some of the doilies, I've left them still flapping a little bit so that they're textural, but the thing that's happened that is lovely is it's kind of quilted it. The post pack was, because it's got some thickness to it, it's a little bit textural. It looks as if the doilies have now been quilted a little bit on the top. Now I could continue to sew a lot of pattern and decoration onto it, but probably gathered that I'm not that sort of person really. I love colour and texture, but I don't like too much fuss. So there we go, the back has worked nicely, and you can see that here's where I've stitched with my sewing machine, and the doilies are sewn on the top, and they're not going to come off. You can see that it's kind of got a little bit of quilting going on. So now what we can do is we can glue our back on, You can see that it's just slightly smaller. So let's do that. We'll put glue all over the back of this. So we just want to pick up that edge. I've been on a bit of a thing lately that I'm trying to make some storage solutions for my craft room. So here's another one of those storage solutions. And to store those unusual things that you think, where am I going to put that? Doesn't really have a home. So I'm thinking I'm going to now go back to my sewing machine, and I'm going to run a stitch all the way around the edge. I'm going to run it around on the face because it's the most important surface visually. And I'll try and pick up some of these little bits of the doily as I'm stitching around it. And then that will pick up, hopefully I don't miss the edge, that will pick up this paper backing as well. All right, we're getting close, aren't we? I'll see you soon. There we go. I've got it stitched. I'm not sure whether you can see that I've picked up the doilies on the edges where I could. Hopefully you're seeing that. And I've done a straight stitch all the way around. And I did it around about a centimetre in, so that's 3/8 of an inch in from the edge. And I've picked it up on the inside, but Evelyn, you'll see that my tension's gone all haywire again. I'm going to have to play with my machine, and I think it's the screw on the bobbin, the tension on the bobbin. I need to adjust that again, but you can see the tension is not quite right. And the reason I'm saying that is because Evelyn's been very helpful with giving me some tips to fix that. So we'll have to keep working on that. Now, let's pull out the base. Oh, this is looking nice together, isn't it? I had to rummage through my fabric to try and find a piece of fabric that was big enough. A lot of my fabric is samples from when I was doing design, and I don't have very many bigger pieces of fabric. They're all quite small swatches, so I have limited supply, but I'm liking the look of this together. And when you open it up, it's got navy on the inside, which picks up this colour here. And we need to put some eyelets in, and I need to find some cord. Let's do our eyelets first. Maybe there. Maybe we go there and there. And then we need to get this the right way round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my grid. Okay, so all I've been doing is measuring to work out where to put my eyelets. And I'm wanting to try and get the pattern on the back relatively straight. All right, let's see if our crocodile is going to cope with this. Yes, we managed to get the holes done. The next challenge is getting our eyelets in, isn't it? So yes, I said that I've been wanting to get a few storage solutions done, and I've got a few more planned. We did our patch storage where I made this to store my patches, and I've got it on my desk actually, just tucked in. It's nice and little, and it will prompt me to use my patches. That's my mini ephemera storage journal. So all I'm doing now is I'm just lining up the front and the back so that I can mark where I'm going to put the eyelets on the front of the doily storage. And it's a little bit tricky missing those doilies, to be honest. Let's mark that, and I'm just going to put a mark onto the fabric, and we'll punch a hole with our crocodile. Now I will use some washers on this because the fabric can be a little bit tricky with fraying. And I want it to last. I want my granddaughter to be using it just like Amelia's granddaughter, my mother, is still using hers. All right, now let's pull out some eyelets. I don't have a great deal of selection, but I think I'm liking the brass ones the best. All right, let's see if it's going to go through our base. I'm not feeling confident about this, to be honest, because my eyelets are not very big. No, they're not long enough, but they are just working enough. This base is super sturdy and straight, like it is as straight as anything, and it's because we did that trick with gluing it at right angles. That's good. Now let's see how we go with this. We might have more luck with this because the postage pack will probably compress. Oh yes, that worked perfectly. And the washer was a good idea. That's a bit of a win. This has been a fun project actually. As you can tell, I haven't made one prior. I normally try and do examples prior to my videos, but I don't have an example for this. We're only making one, troubleshooting along the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear the decks. I'll find some cord of some sort and we'll put our doily holder together. I'll see you in a moment. Now I had a bit of a rummage. I don't really have any nice cord. I'm going to have to buy myself some nice gold cord. At the moment, the best that I could do was get some faux leather lashing, but we'll use that for the moment, and then the next time I'm at Spotlight, I'll get myself some really nice gold cord, I think. Let me tell you how long it is, because it needs to be long enough so that it can open and then for it to fold under, like my great-grandmother's did. So I'll tell you how long I'm starting this with. So I'm starting with a piece that's about 26 inches long. I'm threading it through the back. You can see that we've put 4 eyelets in. They're spaced about 4.5 centimeters apart, which is 1 3/4 inches. 2 centimeters in from the edge, which is around about 3/4 of an inch. And you can see that I've put 2 eyelets here and there's 2 eyelets there. And then that's the same measurement for the front as well. And then I'm threading this up through the front, and then I'm tying a knot in the end of my lashing, or the end of the cord, and I'm tying a big enough knot so that it doesn't go back through my eyelet. So I'm actually tying 3 knots on this one because my lashing isn't very thick. That's why I think that nice braided cord would be better, and that's what was on my grandmother's one, was braided cord. I will pick up some of that. Now in centimeters, that's around about 70 centimeters per length, and there's 2 of them. So 2 pieces that are 26 inches long, or that's around about 70 centimeters long. I've really enjoyed doing this today, and I think it's because I was inspired by my great-grandmother's, and I don't know whether she had made hers and had done the, the dot work and line work on it, hot needle work. I have really enjoyed making it and figuring it out. Now you can see that that cord's probably a little bit long. We could drop it down to, I think, 24 inches, which is around about 60 centimeters. I think you could make them a little bit smaller, and it opens, and then you lay all your doilies in. So let's put my doilies in, my new make. Here's my pile of doilies. They've still got the price tickets on them. So you lay your doilies in, and I'll lay my sets together. I've got a few nice ones actually that I've scored from the thrift store. And if they're too big, you can see that this one's going to be too big. Just fold it when you're ironing them and pressing them. Just fold them so that they will fit in. And you can see that they get a bit piled high, and that was why I wanted the top to be a little bit more flexible. They're a nice set, those ones. And this is my favourite one. Look at this. This is all handmade, and it is stunning. You can see it on there. I didn't want to use that. I'm not going to want to use that one. I know that. I'm going to want to hold on to it. Oh, I'm liking how the top is flexible. See how it's bending down because it's made out of that postage pack. Oh, that's a win. Thrilled with that. There we go. Let's tuck our price ticket in for our doilies. There we go. Isn't that wonderful? And it's made out of scrap packaging. We used the scrap cardboard from our 12 by 12 paper pad, and we used a postage pack. So even better that we've made it out of rubbish. That's a fantastic upcycling project. All right, there's my new doily holder. I hope you really enjoyed that project today. I loved doing this project. It's probably been one of my favourite projects that I've done all year. And the fact that I upcycled some rubbish and made it, and look how beautiful it is. And it's now holding all of my doilies, and it's going to hold a lot of doilies. Look, you would be able to make it like this thick and it would still work, which is fabulous. And it wasn't hard to make. It was just, problem solving a few things along the way. So I hope you really enjoyed the video of seeing how I figured it out and also how I solved some problems. And if you did enjoy the video, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up or a hype. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, think about subscribing. That would be wonderful. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend and maybe make yourself a doily holder out of scrap cardboard and a postage pack. All right, that's all from me today. I really appreciate you watching and would love it if you left a comment of what you think about our doily holder, inspired by a 100-year-old antique one. So I'll see you next week with another project. I've got a few other exciting projects coming up, so I'll see you then. Bye for now.